I get asked for my opinion a lot.
Why do you get asked for your opinion a lot?
Because I have one, I guess. Like, I feel like, yeah, if you have one and someone has some space to fill and wants to pose an interesting question, then yeah,
And what
they know that I can talk for England about things I'm interested in.
what helps you form an opinion? Are you someone who kind of carefully looks at all the different things and measures it all out, or are you someone who's like gut instinct?
A bit of both, really. I usually have my own personal opinion and then sort of, like any sensible person, realise that it's only mine, and so therefore look for other schools of thought and sort of realising that opinion's malleable as well. Like, you don't have to have one. We grow and change all the time, and we're informed by what we hear, see, interpret, think, social interaction. So I don't think of my opinion as something that's ever fixed, because we're always absorbing information in different ways all the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I was just thinking about we kind of admire people who have a standpoint and hold to it. That's one thing that we're kind of taught. It's good to stand by your morals and kind of have a standpoint, but it doesn't. You've got to be open to other points of view.
Yeah. At what point does it become willful ignorance? Like, it's okay to stand by your opinions, and you should, but you should also be open to bending them. Otherwise, you'll soon run out of ideas.
So, if people come to you because you're someone who's good for the chat,
Yeah.
and someone who's got angles and stuff,
Yeah.
this must mean that you're a big thinker.
Yeah. I mean, I'm severely disabled and fairly static, so you spend a lot of time in your own head just by the nature of that beast, I think. But some people can bowl around taking absolutely nothing from life, so it depends on your personality and also my parents, I guess. I was encouraged to think and have an opinion, which helps, for sure.
When you say you're severely disabled, could you describe for people listening what that means?
Yeah, so I've got severe cerebral palsy, which means I'm confined to electric power chair most of the time, and that affects my posture and sort of my my posture and I have to do 24-hour posture management and pain management as well, just from being static and getting older, and lots of variables really. But yeah, something I was born with, so it's due to premature birth. I was born 3.5 months early.
And you talked about the pain. What kind of pain are we talking? Are we talking about sharp pain, or are we talking about dull pain? How would you describe it?
Now I have a lot of muscle pain, and I also suffer from scoliosis, which is curvature of the spine, which as I get older is starting to cause complications with my nerves and organs. So it's something that they monitor. But some of it is just aging as well. So it's hard to know where the intersection sort of exists. Yeah, whether it's disability or just getting old.
Getting old. We're all getting old.
Yeah, exactly. You were getting old
The
all
aches
the
and
time.
pains.
So yeah, I think it's a mixture of lots of things. But if you're born with a disability, you get used to it, like anything.
When you've got a disability, do you feel you have to represent all the time? And is it a bit tiring to like, why do I have to have an opinion about this? Why can't I just be allowed to have a free-ranging opinion? But because of my disability, I'm expected to frame it within a certain...
That's a great question. I pride myself on also being able to live a banal existence. Like, we're not all Paralympians, right? So I think there is value in seeing the everyday as kind of beautiful and normal, and yeah, to be able to see when parity and inclusion and all that sort of thing is important, but also to acknowledge our difference as disabled people and our right to be vulnerable. I think if you always measure yourself against other people, you can forget about your own personal vulnerability and the importance of being able to accept that as it is.
That phrase, our right to be vulnerable, I've not heard that before. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's something that I think about a lot because I have a lot of friends who are in disability who are very successful. You know, they're successful by any measure. They have, children, a house, a car, good job. And they've always fought for parity in the system, but what kind of parity are we looking for? Are we looking for parity in economic opportunity? Are we looking for political parity? Are we looking for social parity? What does it mean to be the same as everyone else, quote unquote? So I've always thought that was an interesting thing. And then the flip side of that is, what does it mean to be vulnerable then? What does it mean to be disabled in a society that is constantly obsessed with success and measures of it? What does it mean to then not measure your life by those metrics?
And vulnerability in our society today, being emotionally vulnerable is seen as a positive. But the word vulnerable, nobody wants to feel vulnerable in a physical sense. It's it depends where you put the vulnerability as to how you see it.
And it depends on whether you see vulnerability as inherently bad or problematic. Like, it's okay to not know, and to, suffering is part of the human condition. So does that mean it's wrong or that we should avoid it? I don't know. But it's certainly things that I think about, yeah. Especially when you're severely disabled, you become more aware of your mortality. So these existential philosophical questions are kind of inevitable, really.
And yet you talked about earlier about the banal existence and how that's something that we should all be allowed to have also, and not feel that everything has to be meaningful.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this might sound a bit morbid, but I sort of think of life as inherently meaningless, and then if you manage to deduce some meaning from it, then that's a bonus. If everything is inherently meaningless, it also takes the pressure off. It means there's no pressure to be anybody, and so in some ways that's how I found my personal sense of freedom. Yeah, if that makes any sense.
It does. I have to concentrate hard because you're a deep thinker and there's a lot of ideas going on.
Well, you might discover that when you go back and edit it, it's actually just the ramblings of a nonsensical idiot. So we'll see. But I think, I don't know. You caught me in a contemplative state because I was just sitting in the sun. I wasn't really doing anything.
Well, it's the time of day. The sun is kind of quite low in the sky. It's an evening in East London. We're in a park. There's people lying on the ground. There's a bunch of kids in the distance playing football. There's a sense of calm. I think everyone is taken in by that calm, and I think it affects, what everyone's doing around us at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just sitting there and just thinking.
Yeah, the conditions are right.
What jobs have you done, and how have they shaped you as a person?
So I started out as a child actor for the BBC. I was part of a local youth theatre group called the Half Moon Young People's Theatre in Stepney Green. It's quite famous for having mixed groups. So it has, able-bodied groups, disabled groups and mixed groups. I was in a mixed group. They were looking for a particular type of person who was in a wheelchair who could be in a sitcom, who was Asian, and they couldn't find anybody, and they were looking around all the local kind of theatre groups to see if there was anyone willing to audition. And my mum's a freelance theatre actor of 40 odd years, so she said, you can go to the audition if you want to, you know. I mean, you've seen me struggle as an actor, so it's entirely up to you.
When you say she said you've seen me struggle as an actor.
Yeah.
Is acting a life of rejection in terms of auditions, not getting parts? Is that how she meant?
Yeah, I think so. I think because we've always not had a great deal of cash. Like sometimes we have, you know, the beauty of being a freelancer is occasionally you can come into large sums of money, but they have to last, you know. Like unless your work is consistent, you have to find a way of making that money stretch. So we've always not had a great deal of money. But it was more to do with also, like, do you want to be an actor? Like, you've seen how hard it can be, as you say, like a life of rejection. Do you really want to be part of that as well at 13, you know? I didn't really know, but I just thought it was I'll just give it a shot.
So you went as a 13-year-old. You'd never been an actor before. You went to the audition, or you went to the play, or to the youth group that was doing it.
Yeah.
You ticked the boxes that they wanted.
Yeah.
Being Asian and being in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure you didn't want to fit into those boxes.
But I am in those boxes. You know, like, it's one of those contradictory things. It's like, that's the thing about what was used to be referred to as positive discrimination. The way it came about was to try and give people who didn't have advantage in the market some sort of leg up. So, you know, there are positive aspects to be put in those boxes because we don't have the same employment as Asian people or disabled people. So, you know, in a way, it was like that's just what the role required. So I didn't see it as a box. I just saw it as maybe I fit. Yeah.
And as a 13-year-old, it's a time of life. It's your first teenage year.
Yeah.
There's lots of changes
Mm-hmm.
coming up. You're young. You're full of energy. You're full of, I don't know, hope.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it felt like when you started acting?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a bit of an old man. You know, like even at like 10 years old, sort of old and grumpy. Yeah.
Not old and wise.
Oh, well, a bit of both, maybe. Yeah. Grumpy and wise. Yeah. Also, because I need to be cared for, I need to know what to ask of people and spent a lot of time around adults as a result of that. So I think if you spend a lot of time around adults and you have a severe disability, you probably grow up faster than perhaps you should.
When people have to care for you, you say you have to be cared for. How much do you have to rely on other people in your life?
Pretty much for everything. I mean, the way you see me now is my most presentable and finished and put together. But there's a lot of work behind the scenes from carers, from care agencies, and my mum's input that you don't see. That, you know, it's a bit like the theatre, really. You sort of rehearse and then present it. I feel like I have to sort of reveal myself every morning, you know, whatever that might mean, you know. But yeah, I think it also means that you have to be able to be comfortable around strangers very fast and communicate your needs very effectively from quite a young age.
So it's kind of up to you to manage everyone around you rather than everyone around you to manage you.
Yeah, I mean, when you're younger, it's a bit of input from, you know, other people because you don't necessarily know what you need. But I think you realise pretty quickly that you ought to know what you need, as a disabled person in order to get by. Because if you can't communicate your needs, then you're going to be stuck, literally, sometimes.
Do you basically have to have heightened senses in your world to be very aware both of what your needs are, but be very aware of how everyone is around you? Or could you just not bother about it some days?
I think you do, if you want to keep safe, right? Like safe and healthy. Yes. And later, after I became an actor, I trained as a theatre director. I got into drama school and did a BA in directing. So
why the crossover? What made you think acting's one thing, directing's another?
Being directed, I guess.
As in it's not a nice experience.
That you, as an actor, you have to understand what the difference is, because you've got a role that is completely different to what a director does. And in order to be able to take direction from somebody, you sort of have to understand what the point of it is. Otherwise, you're just sort of thinking, why is that person telling me what to do? Especially at 13, you don't understand that person's an overseer, somebody who, is trying to tell a story with a group of people and is an outside eye. And you can only really understand that as a teenager, I think, by having someone do it to you, and then sort of thinking, maybe I'm analytical enough to do that. My job, in a sense, is to come in, often with a short amount of time and small budget, and determine what is needed to kind of turn the gas up underneath a text or a piece of work.
And being a director,
yeah,
you're making decisions. It must affect, like anyone in any role of responsibility, the fact that you're making decisions of people who are doing what you ask must in some way affect how you view yourself, because you've been given a position of power. So it must naturally increase your confidence and increase your own thoughts that your ideas are the best ideas, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the key to being a good director is, like I love sort of feeding back into what I was saying earlier, is that your idea is only one idea, but you have to know which are the ones to follow up, and which ones to discard. But it's ultimately a collaborative process. Some of the best ideas I've ever had in a production have not come from me, They've come from other people. So it's about listening to those and being open to them, and not thinking that yours is always the right one, because that will lead you down the garden path. It's not about having total convictions in your ideas always. It's also about being malleable, and you have to realize as a director that you're nothing without actors. A rehearsal can't start without other people. So in that way, that gives you the humility hopefully required to create a nice atmosphere in rehearsals that is ultimately creative, because you can't create under duress.
But you're under duress because it's a theatre. There's a deadline. There's a show start. There's an audience. There is pressure.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a walk in the park, but I think it's something that the more you do, the easier it becomes, like anything, and I know that the pressure is not all mine, like when I see the actors get up on stage for the first time to do the first show, there's nothing I can do, so it's also about
that's all at that point it's in their hands.
Yeah, so then it becomes about trust, and believing in the people that you work with. Yeah. First and foremost, when we audition somebody for a part, we often give them the job because we like them as people first. I think, the idea that, we give people roles just purely based on the work that's required is only part of it. The other part is we have to be able to get on with you for however, you know what I mean?
Like any job,
Yeah.
like any job interview.
So I think often the most gifted actors that I've come across are also great people. It's not always the case, but 99% of the time. So don't try to fit in, like what we were talking about before. Don't try and fit into a box. If someone wants to hire you, they're going to hire you, 70% because they like who you are. We get in the way of ourselves because we kowtow to expectation, and you should just be yourself. Yeah. That sounds so wanky, but it's true. When people say, "Oh, when you go on a date, just be yourself," isn't that the hardest thing in the world? Like,
Yeah, it's impossible.
yeah, because we think that there's some magic to it. It's actually easier than we make it out to be. And the only reason we think we're not being ourselves is because we're weighed down by expectation. What if this person doesn't like what I do, or what I say, or what I think? And that makes us act differently to how we should. Yeah, as I say, we get in the way of ourselves a lot.
What were you thinking about when I cycled past you? What were you, how have you spent your day today? What kind of day has it been?
It's been an easy one today, because one of my things being a severely disabled person is I fear being isolated. So I always try and, even when, my friends aren't around or my mum's got something to do, I try and go to places where I will find people, even if I'm going to be by myself. Because I also like to people watch, because, that's part of performance as well. I steal people's walks for characters and things like that. Or just observe how people sit. I like, the reason I gravitated towards the performing arts was because I already did these things naturally. I like people. I'm kind of intrigued by the human condition, and so that lends itself to telling stories, and part of that is being around people, even if you're by yourself. Yeah. When you initially come up to me, I was like, "Oh, I thought you might be like some sort of religious person, like a sort of what I would refer to as a god bod." I was like, what does this member of the church want?
And what would you have said to me if I'd said to you, have you thought about X or Y as the answer?
I would have said, yeah, I'm already going to hell, so thanks. Yeah. No, I'm being facetious, but to be honest, I'm open to people talking to me. But I am a Londoner, so I treat everyone with a bit of automatic suspicion.
I like that. I like that phrase, automatic suspicion as a Londoner.
Yeah.
Why do you reckon that is? Is it because this? What's wrong with this city?
I think it's because people have to keep themselves safe. A bit of healthy suspicion is good. Yeah, like if you were the opposite and just completely open to everything and everyone, you'd soon find yourself in a mess, right? But it is about being in an individualistic society. You think, what does this person want? And in a way that's bad, because sometimes people don't want much. Sometimes people just want to chat or sit with you, oftentimes I sit in silence with my friends because I know them really well. We don't have to fill the gaps,
I think that thing about silence with old friends is magical.
Yeah.
And you can only really do it with people you know really well, because if you do it with
Yeah.
people you don't, it's just simply awkward.
Yeah.
Like if we sat here in silence for 5 minutes.
Mm.
Because we don't know each other, it'd probably be a bit odd.
Yeah,
We could try it.
But we could definitely try it. But at the same time, it's all about expectation, right? If you expect me to speak, then yeah. But if I said to you, we're going to sit here in silence for 5 minutes and you can speak it only if you want to, then the pressure's off, you know. Then you could sit here for 5 minutes and I wouldn't think it was odd because we've already agreed the parameters. Like I think of the thing about old friends is you have an unspoken agreed parameter that you don't have to speak. They also know that when I want to say, me personally, when I want to say something, I will. So, you know, they're probably quite grateful for sitting in silence for 5 minutes. But, you know, yeah.
Willie, shut up.
Yeah. I've never had, but I can also do that as well. Like I think there's so much value in being able to sit with your own thoughts, and you know, I try to relish being bored as well. Like I think
That's an interesting one, relishing, because most of us fear being bored.
yeah, of course we do. That's why we have phones and you know everything else. We're so afraid of our own company. We'll do anything to detract from it. Yeah, I think it's really important. I think we've lost the ability to be okay with being bored. I think being bored is useful. If you're never bored, you know you'll never know when it's good, right? So what should I be doing that I'm not doing? That's all expectation that only stands us up for failure most of the time. Like if we think we're being unproductive all the time, then we're just creating an expectation we can never fulfill. And I think that's part of the problem with society, is that we can't sit with ourselves. You know? Yeah. And like I said, because I'm forced to sit with myself, like...
Yeah, you've got no choice.
Yeah, so I can then advocate for it, you know.
You're an expert.
Yeah, I'm an expert at sort of being inside my own head. For better or for worse.
You could turn that to your advantage, write a book about it, and make yourself rich.
I could, but then one, I don't know if it'll make me rich. Like, to be rich in ideas is more important. Secondly, I don't know if anyone cares as much as I do, and you'll only find that out, I guess, once you put a book out. But also, there's so many clever people in the world who said more profound things than I'll ever say. So, am I just adding to the noise? I don't know.
Going back to the thing about silence, people are listening. People, it might be one person, might be nobody listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
People are listening because they don't want to be in their own silence. They want to be in somebody else's life, and the point of this podcast is to give people access to somebody else's life and thoughts, and drop into their life and hear what they've got to say. And so we're always curious about other people. I mean, you say you're a people watcher, but everyone's everyone's curious, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm just interested in people, and like you said, I think we all are, but we don't always know how to. We're inquisitive, but we're not inquisitive enough often to ask, you know, because that takes a different level of bottle and confidence. I think the one thing that theatre really did for me as a disabled person was bring me out of myself, because, you know, as a young kid with a severe disability in a major city, you don't really know what you know, nobody teaches you how to navigate the system as a disabled person, and nobody teaches you how to rub along. So
you got to work it out yourself.
Yeah.
But that phrase, to rub along.
Yeah.
Getting on with it.
Yeah, is really important. Yeah, but I don't say that in some sort of aspirational fashion. Like if you want to sit as a disabled person and do absolutely nothing, because no one's ever doing absolutely nothing, right? But if you want to sit with yourself and be vulnerable, you should have that right.
Let's do an experiment.
Okay.
We don't know each other,
Yeah.
but let's sit here in silence
Okay.
and see what happens. See who breaks first.
It would definitely be me. Despite the suggestion. Yeah.